Welcome to today's video, where we'll explore some of the most mysterious unsolved murder cases. These chilling stories have baffled investigators for years, and the truth still remains a mystery. If you are not subscribed to our channel, then please do, and help us reach 10K subscribers before the end of the year. Without further ado, let's take a closer look at the cases that continue to haunt us. It was the night of June 12, 1994, in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Nicole Brown Simpson, the ex-wife of former football star O.J. Simpson, was found brutally murdered outside her home. Alongside her was Ronald Goldman, a waiter who had no connection to the Simpson family but happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Their deaths would spark one of the most high-profile and controversial criminal cases in U.S. history. Nicole's body was discovered by a neighbor who heard a commotion outside. When they called the police, they found her lifeless body with multiple stab wounds to her neck and head. Ron Goldman's body was found nearby, also stabbed several times. Bloodstains leading from Nicole's home to the street suggested that he had been trying to help her, or had gotten caught in a deadly confrontation. The brutal nature of the crime shocked the public, but it was just the beginning of a complex story. The main suspect in the murders was O.J. Simpson, Nicole's ex-husband. He had a history of domestic violence, and just months earlier, Nicole had filed a police report accusing him of assault. On the night of the murders, O.J. was not immediately available for questioning, which raised suspicions. When the police visited his home, they found him in a distressed state, but no clear evidence to directly tie him to the crime scene. However, the case took a significant turn when O.J.'s infamous white Ford Bronco chase occurred just days later. On June 17, 1994, O.J. led police on a slow-speed chase across Los Angeles, with millions of people watching on live television. He was facing charges of double murder, and this bizarre moment seemed to confirm the mounting public belief that he was guilty. The investigation into the murders uncovered a troubling amount of evidence that pointed to O.J. Simpson. A bloody glove was found at the crime scene that matched a glove found at Simpson's home. Police also found blood in his car, as well as DNA evidence linking him to the murders. But the defense team, known as the Dream Team, quickly discredited much of the evidence, suggesting police mishandling and even planting of evidence. The prosecution argued that O.J.'s violent history with Nicole, along with the overwhelming physical evidence, made him the clear killer. But O.J.'s defense attorneys crafted a case that raised doubts. They questioned the DNA evidence and suggested that racial prejudice played a role in the investigation. The central question in the case became, was O.J. Simpson guilty of murder? Or was he the victim of a biased police force? The trial began in January 1995, and what followed was a spectacle that captivated the nation. It was a battle between two powerful forces: the prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, and the defense, led by Robert Shapiro, Johnny Cochran, and others. The courtroom drama became a national obsession, with live broadcasts and media coverage around the clock. One of the most memorable moments from the trial came when Johnny Cochran uttered the now infamous phrase, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit."
It's no disguise. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
This was in reference to the bloody glove found at the crime scene, which seemed to be too small for O.J.'s hand. The defense argued that the glove didn't fit because the police had planted it, and this line of reasoning helped convince the jury. After months of testimony, the jury deliberated for just a few hours before returning a shocking verdict: not guilty.
BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson.
The nation was stunned. Many believed O.J. had gotten away with murder, but the defense's argument about the mishandling of evidence and the possibility of a racially biased police force had won the day.
As short as they did and come back with a not guilty verdict, I think it shows the jury was pretty irresponsible, and money can buy you justice, exactly.
While O.J. was acquitted in the criminal trial, the Brown and Goldman families didn't give up. In 1997, they took O.J. to civil court, where the burden of proof was lower. This time, the jury found him liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, and awarded the families $33.5 million in damages. Despite the verdict, many questions about the murders remain unanswered. O.J. Simpson has always maintained his innocence, but in the years since, his actions and statements have continued to raise doubts. He has never been convicted of the murders, but the mystery surrounding that fateful night in 1994 endures. The murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman have left a permanent mark on American culture, law, and the criminal justice system. The case raised questions about domestic violence, race, celebrity, and the power of the media. Even decades later, the mystery of what truly happened that night remains unsolved for many. For the families of Nicole and Ron, the quest for justice continues as their memories live on in a case that changed history. It was a quiet spring evening on September 19, 1952, in the suburb of Wilston, Brisbane, Australia. Betty Shanks, a 22-year-old university student, was on her way home after attending a night class at the Commercial College in Brisbane. She had taken the tram, as she always did, and planned to walk the rest of the way to her parents' home, but Betty never made it. Her murder would go down as one of Australia's most enduring mysteries, sparking decades of speculation and unanswered questions. At around 10:30 p.m., neighbors near Thomas Street heard muffled screams and unusual noises. It wasn't until the next morning, however, that Betty's battered body was found in a garden near the tram stop. She had been brutally beaten, with injuries to her face and head so severe that police initially struggled to identify her. The attack was ferocious. Detectives concluded that Betty's assailant had likely been lying in wait, ambushing her as she walked the quiet streets. Her purse and personal belongings were scattered nearby, ruling out robbery as the motive. The Brisbane police launched an extensive investigation. Over 130 people were interviewed in the first few weeks, but no solid suspects emerged. Forensic analysis in the 1950s was rudimentary, and there was little physical evidence to work with. Witnesses reported seeing suspicious figures in the area, including a man lurking near the tram stop, and a motorcyclist speeding away from the scene shortly after the screams were heard. Despite these leads, no one could confirm the identity of the attacker. The community was shaken. Betty Shanks was described as a bright, kind young woman with no known enemies. Her murder shattered the sense of safety in Brisbane's suburbs, leaving residents fearful and on edge. As years passed, various theories about Betty's murder emerged. Some believed it was a case of mistaken identity, with Betty being targeted by someone who thought she was another woman. Others speculated it was a random, senseless act of violence. One of the most enduring theories involved the motorcyclist. Witnesses described a man on a motorcycle seen near the crime scene, but he was never identified. Some investigators believed this individual was key to solving the case, but the lead grew cold. Another theory suggested that a police officer might have been involved. This idea stemmed from rumors that Betty had been attacked with a flashlight, an item commonly carried by officers at the time. However, this theory lacked substantial evidence and was never confirmed. Over the decades, individuals have come forward claiming to have information about the case, but none have provided conclusive evidence to solve the mystery. The murder of Betty Shanks became one of Australia's most infamous cold cases. Her death not only horrified the community but also highlighted the limitations of 1950s policing. Advances in forensic science, such as DNA analysis, came too late to help in Betty's case, leaving it unsolved. The garden where Betty's body was found remains a somber site, marked by a plaque in her memory. Her murder is still the subject of documentaries, books, and amateur investigations, as armchair detectives continue to search for answers. For her family, the pain of losing Betty has never faded. Her case is a reminder of how a single act of violence can ripple through generations, leaving an indelible mark on those left behind. More than 70 years later, the murder of Betty Shanks remains one of Australia's greatest mysteries. Who was responsible for her brutal death? Was it a stranger or someone she knew? While modern technology might one day provide answers, for now, the case continues to haunt Brisbane and the wider world. It was the evening of September 14th, 1954, in South Ruislip, West London. Jean Marie Townsend, a 21-year-old secretary, had been enjoying a social night out with friends. She left the local pub called the Wishing Well around 11 p.m., intending to walk the short distance home. Tragically, she would never arrive. The next morning, her lifeless body was found on a patch of wasteland along Victoria Road. What followed was a murder investigation that shocked the community and would become one of London's most perplexing unsolved cases. Jean was discovered lying face down, fully clothed, with her scarf tied tightly around her neck. She had been strangled to death. Although her body showed no signs of sexual assault, police believe the crime may have been sexually motivated due to the violent nature of the attack. Her purse and belongings were found nearby, ruling out robbery as the motive. The area where her body was found was dark and isolated, a perfect spot for a killer to strike without being seen. The Metropolitan Police quickly launched an investigation, interviewing dozens of locals and pubgoers who might have seen Jean that night. Witnesses reported seeing her leave the Wishing Well pub alone, but what happened after she left remained unclear. Rumors of an American being involved intensified when a resident living near the scene reported hearing a woman cry for help late on the night of the murder, followed by two male voices arguing, one of which seemed to have an American accent. One of the women, Miss Jacqueline Cliff, told reporters how she had been approached repeatedly by a man aged about 30 with a high forehead who spoke with an American accent and drove an American-type car. Another young woman, Joan Gala, reported being attacked by a man late at night on Victoria Road on the Saturday before the murder. Her description of her attacker included the fact that he had a high forehead. As the investigation progressed, several theories emerged. Some believed that Jean may have been targeted by a stranger, possibly someone who had followed her from the pub. Others speculated that the killer was someone she knew, as there were no signs of a struggle, suggesting she may have been caught off guard. Another intriguing theory linked Jean's murder to a series of other unsolved killings in the area, including the notorious Jack the Stripper murders of the 1960s. These killings, which targeted young women, bore some similarities to Jean's case. However, no concrete evidence ever connected her death to the later murders. Some investigators even speculated that the murderer could have been a U.S. serviceman, as South Ruislip was home to an American Air Force base at the time. The base was known for its transient population, making it difficult to track down potential suspects. Despite their efforts, the police were unable to find enough evidence to charge anyone with Jean's murder. Leads dried up, witnesses moved on, and the case eventually went cold. Jean's family was left devastated, with no answers and no justice for their beloved daughter. The media coverage of the case faded, but locals in South Ruislip never forgot the tragedy. The haunting image of a young woman's life cut short lingered in the minds of residents, and her death became a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking in even the safest of communities. Nearly 70 years have passed since Jean Townsend was brutally murdered, and her killer has never been found. Who was responsible for her death? Was it a stranger, a spurned acquaintance, or was it the American man with a big forehead? The answers remain buried in the shadows of that fateful night. Jean's case. like so many others, serves as a haunting reminder of how one moment of violence can leave an everlasting scar. While the search for justice may seem impossible now, her memory endures as part of London's unsolved mysteries. Nicknamed the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress, was brutally murdered in Los Angeles, California, her body cut in half and severely mutilated. Her body was found on January 15, 1947, in a vacant lot near Leimert Park. The Black Dahlia's killer was never found, making her murder one of the oldest cold case files in LA to date, as well as the city's most famous. Short was born on July 29, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts, the third of 5 daughters born to Cleo and Phoebe May Short. Cleo abandoned the family when Short was 5 years old. At a young age, Short developed a strong affinity for cinema. By her teens, she had set her sights on becoming an actress. By the mid-1940s, Short was living in Los Angeles, California, working as a waitress to support herself while dreaming of catching her big break into Hollywood's acting scene. Her chance at stardom, however, would never come. In January 1947, a horrific tragedy occurred. At the age of 22, Short was brutally murdered in Los Angeles, her body cut in half and severely mutilated. Her body was found, nude and posed, by a local female resident on January 15, 1947. In a vacant lot near Leimert Park on the 3800 block, LA's South Norton Avenue. It was pretty gruesome, Brian Carr, a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department who has long worked on the Dahlia case, later said. I just can't imagine someone doing that to another human being. In addition to dissecting and mutilating her body, Short's killer had drained her corpse of blood and scrubbed it clean. The case quickly became heavily covered by the media. Her moniker, Black Dahlia, became widely known shortly thereafter as it was used more frequently than her real name by the press. The case itself took on a life of its own, Carr said. Early on, I think for 2 months it was front-page news in all the local papers every day. An in-depth, lengthy investigation by the LAPD ensued, leading to a number of false reports, including several false murder confessions, and ultimately leaving detectives grasping at straws. The combination of faulty witnesses and a lack of hard evidence surrounding the case greatly hindered its progress. And despite numerous allegations and leads over the years, the Black Dahlia's killer was never found. Today, the Black Dahlia murder remains one of the oldest cold case files in LA, as well as the city's most famous. In early 2013, the Black Dahlia case returned to the headlines. An article in the San Bernardino Sun detailed a more recent investigation of the case that was conducted by retired police sergeant Paul Dosty, author Steve Hodel, and a police dog named Buster. With a keen sense of smell, specifically that of decomposing flesh, which he was trained to detect. According to The Sun, the investigative team has uncovered incriminating evidence against Hodel's father, Dr. George Hill Hodel, who the younger Hodel has long believed to be the Black Dahlia killer.
And I'm talking to my half-sister on the phone a couple of days after his passing. Well, you know, Steve, our father was a suspect in the Black Dahlia murder. I had been a homicide detective for 24 years with LAPD, and I'd been retired for 15 years, and never any hints or clues or anything. So I was confident that I'd be able to establish that he had nothing to do with it. And within a year and a half, I had built a case, much to my surprise, that took me 180 degrees in the opposite direction and actually became a fileable case. I submitted it in secret to the DA, and he said that he would file the case where my father's still alive. First of all, they knew that she had been found at a vacant lot, posed, and surgically bisected, not cut in half with a saw or, but it was a skilled surgeon. So of course that limits your pool right there. Well, my father had been a surgeon in his early years of doctoring, so he certainly had that ability. So he was a powerful, what they called in that day, a high jingo. He was untouchable, and the head of LA County Health Department. And I started digging in, and eventually I built a case that would, basically open the door to the secret files, which nobody knew anything about. We got into those DA files, and lo and behold, he was the prime suspect all along. Steve Hodel could talk for, 20 hours on why his father did it, but here we've actually got an independent, separate file. Actually, what they did was they tape recorded him, 18 detectives, 24/7 for 42 days, around the clock. And they got him not only to confess to the Black Dahlia murder, and these are not phone taps, these are like microphones hidden in the wall that he had no idea were there. And so he cops to paying police, and you have to understand LA was a very corrupt department back then. It was a real life LA Confidential, if you will. And so a lot of the cops were on the take, and Dad had a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of influence. And he was performing abortions for the police department and the politicos of the day. And he was about to be arrested by the DA's office, who had actually taken over the investigation. And we're literally days away from arresting him, and he splits, leaves the country. And he's in the wind. They were happy that he was gone, in the sense that, he could reveal a hell of a lot about a hell of a lot of people. The sad thing is they never came back to it. They just locked it away. Actually, the LAPD destroyed all the files and the tapes. But the DA's office, the lieutenant in charge, kept a second set of books, locked him away. And then when my book came out with all the evidence, and the DA said he'd file, that opened up this vault.
In February 2013, the team conducted an extensive search of the doctor's home, where Buster had previously detected the scent of human decomposition in several areas of the basement, according to reports. Following their search, soil samples taken from Dr. Hodel's home were reportedly submitted for lab testing. Other evidence against George Hodel, according to his son, includes an old recording of a conversation between the doctor and an unknown person, during which Dr. Hodel allegedly stated, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead." Give your thought about this incident in the comments. And if you've made it this far, be sure to take a few seconds to like and subscribe. This helps a lot. Thank you. Jeanette DePalma was an American teenager who was believed to have been murdered sometime on or around August 7, 1972 in Springfield Township, Union County, New Jersey. The case, currently unsolved, has become a matter of significant controversy due in part to coverage in Weird NJ magazine and in the 2015 book, Death on the Devil's Teeth. On the afternoon of Monday, August the 7th, 1972, 16-year-old Jeanette DePalma left her home on Clearview Road in Springfield Township, Union County, New Jersey, telling her mother that she was going to take a train to a friend's house. When she did not arrive at her friend's house or return later that evening, her parents filed a missing person report with the Springfield Police Department the following day. 6 weeks later, on September 19th, DePalma's remains were found atop a cliff inside of Springfield's Hudila Quarry after a local dog brought her decomposing right forearm and hand back to its owner. Further controversy was aroused when it was discovered that the body had been found on a cliff known to locals for several decades as the Devil's Teeth. The Springfield Police Department began an investigation of DePalma's death after an autopsy could not reveal a cause of death. Her remains and clothing showed no evidence of bone fractures, bullet wounds, or knife strikes. No drug paraphernalia was found on or around the body. For undisclosed reasons, the coroner suspected that strangulation was the cause of death. The coroner also discovered an unusually high amount of lead in the remains, but no explanation was found for this occurrence either. Early in the investigation, Springfield police received a tip regarding a homeless man living in the woods near the quarry. This man was known to locals simply as Red, and it was alleged that he fled his campsite in the woods shortly after DePalma went missing. While this lead initially looked promising, the Union County Prosecutor's Office ultimately decided that Red had nothing to do with DePalma's death. Investigators continued to attempt to find leads, but due to a lack of tips from the public, along with inconsistent stories told to the police by her family, friends, and peers, the case eventually went cold. Despite rumors and innuendo offered by Springfield police regarding DePalma possibly dying as the result of a drug overdose, no drug paraphernalia was found on, near, or around her body, and she was not known by friends or family to have used any recreational or prescription drugs other than occasionally smoking marijuana socially. There are many rumors and theories about what could have happened to Jeanette, but none of them come with material strong enough to support them. There is an organization named Justice for Jeanette DePalma. It is dedicated to keeping her memory alive. The organizers are continuing to look for clues, even as the case approaches the half-century mark.